Nice to meet everyone. My name is Miranda Toll. I am the Global Manager of Partner Growth here at Active Campaign. We are a autonomous marketing vendor who helps agencies, marketers, all in between, with assisting for email marketing campaigns and a various slew of other ways to connect and really access your customers and their clients. So that being said, I'm really excited to kick things off here. A little bit more about myself is I do lead a global team here with Active Campaign. We lead all of our 3,500 partners of all kinds, which includes agencies, consultants, as well as just general resellers or anyone who is advocating on behalf of Active Campaign. My team is globally based, so if there is any interest to obviously connect with us after, I'm happy to facilitate some conversations with all of you. What are we going to talk about here today? I think the concept of AI, especially as it pertains to MarTech or agencies, consultancies who are offering services on behalf of their clients, is ever evolving. I think that common theme around AI and what that does for us potentially could be a little bit scary. I think we're going to potentially debunk some myths around the scariness of AI and what that all means. So going through the current landscape, understanding how agencies are evolving into that space, and then what we talk about and recommend when we use AI for our own services to agencies to assist them in that strategy. Talking about some potential use cases for how AI can be leveraged in all of the different facets that you touch with your clients and, even internally on a day-to-day basis. Refining the agency service model and how you can better equip yourselves to be able to handle the needs of the clients as these things progress and change and move forward as time goes on. And then just maybe some final thoughts on some takeaways that you can have. The whole purpose is really not to redefine everyone's strategy altogether, but maybe give some insight into potentially what we're doing as a business and then how that is also affecting our service providers that we leverage day in and day out. The clients, in this day and age, they're always very expressive with the demands they need and they're asking for with our agency partners. It's no different than what is relayed back to us at Active Campaign. Clients just in general demand higher value from the agencies that they work with nowadays. I think that sets a lot of pressure for the agencies and the work that you're doing day in and day out around being able to derive value, prove the ROI that comes with a lot of these pieces. And I think one thing that we are seeing is a organization, and the trends that we're seeing in the market is typically a lot of that competition comes from in-house teams and people doing the status quo. A lot of that is really from budgets are tight. Money typically tends to flow in different ways. Often when certain, geopolitical or economic factors are at play, like that budget tends to become a little bit tighter on what you can do with that and how you take that to external services. So, typically what we found when we do a lot of surveys and also survey the market and, connect with different publications is a lot of companies don't typically tend to engage with agencies, but we want to know that the value is there and the worth and the effort that you guys put in and day out to maximize the value for your clients is obviously not being lost. As we talk about the agency evolution, I think we can all agree on this call is that it is a rapidly evolving landscape. I think when we have very specific ways to measure and track progress in this day and age, it becomes quite important to have a really strong data strategy and how that is able to be relayed to your clients and the ROI that you're providing for all of them. And then what we mentioned previously is the in-house capabilities that potentially some teams can provide or assume that they can provide these days is really a competition for a lot of us doing those third-party external services. And that also allows us to make sure that we do have a strong data strategy in that space to provide, allow people to understand that there is value coming from these services and that we are providing a lot of really strong pieces to help those clients evolve with them over time. Just a little blurb on Active Campaign's agency commitment. We have 3,500 resellers and agencies of all kinds, consultants, people who are doing managed services on our behalf. our platform is very strongly positioned to focus on this particular marketplace and where we serve agencies moving forward, and how we're leveraging AI services to make that need very apparent, and how that translates not only to you all, but then obviously the clients that you serve. So hopefully there's some insight to be gained with this session of ways that we're doing that. The AI revolution is here. AI is no longer working on the horizon. It's not, a fleet of our imagination. I think there's definitely things to still be further developed, and I think we're still figuring out what is the extent of where some of these things are going to come into play. But I think we're all very aware within the last 8 to 10 months that AI is here. It's here to stay. And it's more about how can we maximize our own resources and become experts within this field that clearly is not going away, and should obviously, with the intent, be there to help us all do our jobs more effectively and efficiently. And I think that noise tends to cloud a little bit of our judgment sometimes when it comes to where do I start? How deep do I go? What is the spread of where I take things? What are the tools that I use? All of those things are things to consider when it comes to building a strategy that works, that's repeatable and also scalable to the magnitude of which you're serving clients day in and day out. Your clients don't just need tools, they need a trusted advisor. I think that is something that potentially does get a bit lost in translation. Is AI is merely just a tool. It's an input that we can obviously shape and leverage as human beings, and the human element of all this is really not lost on all of us. And that is really the differentiator between how we continue to provide effective services to our clients and versus them using tools for the sake of using tools. I think we really want to make sure, especially from us at Active Campaign on our front, like the tools are merely just an input to be able to shape and provide context and allow us to do 10x or 20x more than we would normally on any given day. Whereas we're still controlling, we're still in the driver's seat of all those things that are coming to fruition, and AI is merely just the passenger in the seat of the car, so to speak. I do have a question for the chat, and I am interested in the level of penetration that AI currently has in everyone's individual workplace. If people wouldn't mind putting in the chat, how often are you using AI tools in work today? Even if you want to do like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like I use it every day, very intimately, versus 1 being not so much. I'm interested to hear what people's thoughts and opinions are on how prevalent that is in the current work scope. 10, 7, 8, 7. Okay. I love to see this. Very common. Is anyone brave enough to come off mute and tell me a little bit about how they use AI in their current work scope? No takers?
Hey, this is Scott Roberts. I can speak to one of my favorite uses. So most of my work is in the healthcare and pharmaceutical world. And so you're obviously asked to kind of condense a lot of medical information. So you could take the clinical trials of yourself, your competitors, you could put those into AI, and then you can ask it really dumb questions like I like to do. And it helps me be kind of insightful, especially in sort of pitch environments or when you're new to a book of business and you're kind of working through your learning curve. So it just takes the more complex pieces, and then I can play it back to myself in ways that help me quickly comprehend it.
That's great to hear. I think that's a terrific use case and terrific example. Would you say that has saved you a ton of time to be able to work on other things, or how much has that changed like your normal day-to-day working scope?
It helps a lot. Like in our world, we have medical strategists that typically you would have to do like a full back and forth, even for sort of like basic things that you're just wanting to confirm before you kind of walk into it. So it saves me time and kind of gives me that real time. That said, they have not replaced my medical strategist, and I definitely am still finding kind of those, hey, did you make this up? And they're like, yeah, I totally made it up. And I'm like, AI, why'd you do that? So you still kind of get those moments, but it does kind of do the basics of connecting a couple of specific dots that would take me a lot longer or have me relying on other people within the agency to really understand it like a 101 level.
Got it. Well, that's terrific. That's a terrific example. I think all of that does show too, like the human element of all these things is definitely still very prevalent. I think also the that particular example shows that you still need a level of like human oversight to make sure that you're seeing the outcomes that you want to see. And I think that that will still evolve itself in certain ways where that will always be necessary, just for the sake of like we are trying to convey the emotion, we're trying to convey the outcome, the expected piece to the final, uh, deliverable aspect of this is really still very important and when it comes to using AI tools in the workplace. So, and I appreciate Scott for the braveness to come off mute and share your perspective. So like I said, I think what's nice to talk about is like the use cases that maybe we may be using one of these, a few of these, all of these. Like there might be some things that may be more prevalent than others when it comes to using AI tools. We put together kind of a short list of usually the most prevalent things that we think about when it comes to AI tools that are ready right now to be able to make a difference in what that looks like for you in the workplace. And I won't go too in depth on all of these. I'll do maybe a quick highlight overview of a few of these, but I am interested when we have some time at the end for questions and general Q&A and feedback to learn more about how people are using these particular facets when it comes to AI tools, making your lives easier and just overall making a more streamlined approach to how you approach the business. So we're going to start with content creation. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, the intent with AI really is to understand like how to solve time with conversational prompts. So a lot of this is very agent-based. So setting AI tools to be able to do work on your behalf or giving some sort of a certain prompt or blurb to be able to really derive content that's personalized to you and your clients and how you see that fit. I think a lot of this really is the struggle between the expectations for all of us as marketers and people who work on behalf of our clients and deriving this content, having original ideas. Obviously, we have seen in the past certain things around AI potentially taking certain bits of other things, and then there's potentially historically a plagiarism element to this. But as we see AI evolve moving forward, there's a really great opportunity to take some of these different facets that may have been not as well baked out, but then personalizing them to your specific client base and what their needs are. I think a lot of it, even from like a setup perspective to just setting up the baseline understanding of certain templates or layouts or visuals, like is a huge time saver. If we are interested, I can send over some materials post event. We actually did a survey that allowed us to say that marketers with certain AI tools can spend sometimes as much as 13 hours a week and save time with all of these more manual tasks that have been something that historically had to be originated from a human completely. So a lot of this is really how do you personalize these messages across wide audience segments, whether you're focusing on a specific industry or focusing on a specific vertical, a specific product line, anything that comes from between, you can start to use some of these things to either generally set you up for a more repeat and replace strategy or start using these tools to customize that content overall. Personalization. This is a snippet from one of our pages within our UI here at ActiveCampaign. We've launched a lot of really great AI tools within the solution. I won't go too much into ActiveCampaign stuff here today, but a lot of this really is meant to tailor campaigns and content to your audience. The intent obviously is to make sure that you have a more effective strategy on how that content is being delivered to those clients, to those end customers, and what that means for the ROI that's being returned, not only for your services and what you're providing, but then also, what the client sees as the time to value for a lot of these different pieces. You want to make sure that also everything is optimized from start to finish when it comes to creating that campaign, understanding what needs to be sent, when does it need to be sent. All of those things historically require a lot of time, precision, data, lots of inputs from a lot of different people. you may be able to streamline a lot of those things when it comes to having the tools provide that for you, and then be able to send that out and create that when it's at its most personal, send that out at its most optimal time, and making sure that you're seeing a lot of those things happen in the back end so that you can go focus on other work that is not, tracking when an email is being sent. Automation. ActiveCampaign is an autonomous marketing platform that's really kind of what is our bread and butter. A lot of the things that we're doing around autonomous marketing is really just understanding how people can do more meaningful work and be able to automate and write campaigns, understand the customer journey in its full breadth, and be able to have those things run in the background, personalized to your customers' experiences. A lot of this is understanding how repetitive tasks can be more streamlined and just automatically sent out through the means that they need to, where obviously those tasks for higher priority actions are more worth everyone's time. And that's really the goal for a lot of things within automation, automated capabilities, is to pinpoint what is the best next action to take across automations. And that could be something like, let's say you're helping a client with understanding how to get more add-on services for their solutions, or you're helping them understand, like, I want to increase my subscriber list count based on such and such factors. You can set up all of these multiple steps within this automation to basically have an entire campaign spread set up for you on your behalf, and it's running in the background. And as much, as long as you have the proper setup with the initial contacts and who you're reaching out to, everything else is done on your behalf. And then obviously it takes you to next steps as that evolves and that person moves through your conversion funnel. And then, yeah, obviously pre-built automations are, kind of the name of the game here, and helps you speed up any development. You can obviously provide data inputs to that to continue to train the model and make sure that you're seeing exactly what you want to see. Image and video generation. I'm sure we've all seen some pretty interesting AI videos, either on Instagram or other sources. What I will say too is a lot of that is requiring human training, human elements to make sure that someone doesn't end up with a seventh finger on their hand type thing. But what's going to be really interesting in this space around image and video generation is understanding in the future, how are we creating original content when it comes to videos, images that allow us to meet the mission that we're going after. I think some of us have seen potentially some of these commercials that were exclusively made by AI, and to a certain fault, they are quite impressive and pretty, you know, not showing any abnormal signs of certain factors being at play. But that's where I think, look at this as where that's currently at now, and think about what that's going to look like in 5-10 years time. It's going to be quite impressive in terms of the content that we're generating. The best defense, I think, in this case for us as agencies and marketers, is to understand, how can I get ahead of that, and how can I start using those things so that I become an expert in that field. And the best way for us to provide value is, people are going to be wanting the expertise that we provide because we have the know-how and the knowledge within that space. So image and video generation, I think, is going to see a really strong renaissance on some of these things moving forward, especially as we've seen some developments in the market. Data analysis. Like Scott mentioned earlier, a lot of these things are really just helping us clean up data and understand and, realize data points that maybe we couldn't factor in previously, or it took us a lot of time to do that. A lot of this is really understanding, like, how can our customers come to outcomes more quickly? How can they start, realizing certain things and making sense of all these different data points? Previously they were saying big data was the next big thing, the next internet. Data is very powerful. It's the most valuable asset that we have in the modern world. How can we help our customers realize what that looks like, and realize also the outcomes that can be derived by having really strong data in that case? That could be categorizing customers, that could be behavioral data, journey mapping, having the improved engagement when it comes to making sure that you're segmenting certain people in certain places and giving them all that they need. And then also estimate customer lifetime value is a big portion to this. We have a lot of customers in our space who are in the nonprofit or require some level of funding space. And a lot of that really is they're trying to help their customers understand who is at the position of greatest need. How can I start using certain data points around these people who come to us at multiple touch points to be able to provide a holistic picture of where to serve them at the best point, and then how we can help them obviously get buy-in and support for these important causes when it comes to certain, spaces in that area. A lot of this could be very much at scale, personalized follow-ups, all these things that really are needed to maintain a holistic, relationship with one of your end clients. A lot of this is obviously a great place for AI to be diving in and helping you synthesize some of that information. Research. So, I think AI chatbots, virtual assistants, real-time customer feedback, I think those are quite important when it comes to ways that people can access us and ways that people can access their brands that they're interacting with, our clients, the things that they're doing that help us really gather what's happening in the field and how easy it is for people to convert on a purchase or a sale or anything in between of how they come to us. AI chatbots you'll see more prevalently in the space. I think that they're a great asset, a great tool. If we're not necessarily maximizing the use of utility of AI chatbots, I think we are potentially at a miss there, just based on what we can derive. And even real life examples, like if you were to book a flight and you need to go through the United app and they have a chatbot where you're not even actually speaking to a real agent, you can change flight information, you can go and upgrade and do all these different things. That's an automated task that it saves someone personally, several minutes to potentially several hours with something like that. All of those use cases obviously add up into potentially time savings and what that means. When it comes to marketing and getting insight from your customers and what they care about, a lot of that is understanding like we could do something like a virtual focus group or panels for instant feedback. Maybe that's looking at potentially surveys and things that can be AI ran, and then obviously you're synthesizing that data to make sure that you're getting the most out of that feedback. Um, I think because there is such a heavy emphasis for the status quo, maybe we can do things in-house, those types of things that are potentially putting some of the services that we all provide here at risk. I think there's a lot of understanding too for making sure that these inputs around data and research are really buttoned up when it comes to using these tools to be able to show that ROI and the value. And this is a great way to start, obviously, is how you research and how you investigate who's your best converting customer and things of that nature. Social media marketing. So a lot of this is I'm sure, pretty self-explanatory. Social media is obviously a very popular channel for a lot of us, and we strategically track obviously the metrics that come through some of those things. I think a lot of those things when it comes to AI tools being leveraged for social media is helping with post creation, design, scheduling of those posts, when's the best time that I can get the most ROI on that, or who am I targeting within this group that allows us to basically really maximize the tools that we're using here and how we can put them into the conversion funnel, put them into another funnel if they were to convert based off something else, really holistically giving you a strategy of all these multiple touch points, social media being a big piece to a lot of people. We're all obsessed with their phones today. And that's you know, a large area for a lot of even, certain conversions on things, whether it's scheduling appointments, retail conversions, purchases, all of those different things that you could do through social media today. I don't think that that's going to go away. If anything, I think we're going to see a lot more people choosing to have that as a more direct route where if we're able to highlight certain things early, also allow us to detect and understand underlying what's the success rate of how a lot of these things are converting. This allows us to really understand too, like from a brand perspective, how is the brand being perceived? If I am, using AI tools to leverage certain searches or certain hashtags or certain keywords, naming conventions that we're seeing holistically, you can get a general understanding of what does that social media platform in general, based on everyone who's accessing that, think about my brand, and what does that mean for us about how we change our strategy moving forward. I think also a lot of this too is understanding how do we look at sentiment across the board when it comes to different regions, cultural aspects of different regions around the world. For my business personally, we have a lot of people who have a very different perspective of how they like to do business and how things are done in certain parts of the world. Most likely in the strategy for Latin America is very different than the strategy that we have for our European nations or even in the US, where it's a little bit more um, tactical when it comes to just straight doing business. So a lot of those things can be leveraged through AI, and you can use some of these different facets to really understand holistically, how can I leverage all of these multiple touch points to be able to get to a single picture of what someone thinks about us or how we end up doing business in this way. Performance marketing. Again, the name of the game here is really to understand how do I give you the best case scenario to be able to provide ROI for your business. Understanding that, AI has been somewhat of a used facet in different ways. Even previously in a previous role for myself, working in call tracking and analytics over there, we use some level of natural language processing in certain ways to be able to drive outcomes for our customers. And that, was several years past, where now we're at a different point where a lot of these things are really um, turning into a larger emphasis around like the outcomes that we're driving for these customers. So taking things a little bit deeper, adding some more specific requirements of what the ROI looks like, how we're able to determine what good performance means, and then be able to be very exact about the calculations that we're deriving, and then understand also where that value is coming to play. I think also like when we're providing services for our clients, we obviously have to really strongly show the value that's happening day in and day out. And sometimes that can be tough in the traditional sense. What's nice about using AI tools and all of these different facets is really understand exactly what's happening and then be able to show exactly what's worth the money that the clients are paying ultimately. A lot of this stuff does play into how you can not only change the data side of things, but then also the creative and the content side of things. A lot of this is really optimizing for what's the best headline, what's the best image to use in an email, what is the best, tagline that I can use for certain performance metrics. Then also that allows you to A/B test and ABCDE test a lot of these different things in a very quick timeline, to be able to find the realization a lot quicker than you could previously. And then I want to make a note here too at the end. About 80% of search users rely on AI summaries at least 40% of the time. So I thought that was quite an interesting tidbit from Bain, that most of us are using AI summaries or we're using AI capabilities when it comes to performance marketing in this way. It's about potentially, do I have the right information to be able to satisfy a lot of those things? And am I writing the right prompts? Am I setting myself up to get the best or, derive the best outcomes from these tools? That's something that potentially is always a work in progress based on what we're seeing. And also the more data that's put into the system, the more that potentially changes the outcome of what you get day in and day out, where you might have the same prompt spin you out 8 or 9 different solutions, and it's up to us as a human to figure out which one is the one that fits the best with my company. Okay, we're gonna transition to a little bit of like how we can be general experts, just some tips and tricks of ways that we can potentially look at differentiating ourselves with others in the space, or even differentiating ourselves from in-house services and things of that nature. A lot of this is really understanding how to become an expert guide. I think these things around client overwhelm, confusion, thinking AI can do everything for them. They don't know necessarily where to start on tools. Every platform makes big promises, but some feels the shame. Can't figure out how to measure ROI or provide value. I think those are looming questions that I think a lot of us really are constantly thinking about, even personally on my team, is how are we continuing to leverage tools to not only help our agencies and consultants, but then also how do we help in turn the end client with that? And a great solution is able to really make it very easy for people to drive those outcomes. Um, it's easier to be a little bit more turnkey than it's not, but sometimes also our jobs are quite convoluted and have a lot of nuance with it. And I think that's where the agency comes into play is we often get ourselves in certain situations where we don't know that it's necessarily a very easy way to come to ROI, and enhancement of AI tools still needs some level of human nuance that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think also for service providers, that's a very strong place there is the human element around having a service, providing a level of human touch that provides a naturalness to the relationship. That still is something that is very prevalent, especially in the space, which is a plus for all of us, is, human to human. People would really rather want to speak to a human and make sure that they have that human connection, and then also have that person understand what the goals are that they're trying to achieve. And for some of us, who have smaller budgets, bigger budgets. A lot of that is really working on maximizing how to best use that spend. Everyone loves to look good for their boss. So the way that we can in turn assist people to all do that within this lineage is the best way to go about that. You are a trusted advisor for your clients. I think that that's the best way to ensure that the longevity of the services that we provide is understanding that you are the trusted advisor who has all the right keys to making the things happen. And I don't think that that would be something that would go away anytime soon. Some tips on just general AI-enabled human-centric agency capabilities. A lot of our partnerships that we talked with at Active Campaign, we do a lot of these things in the same vein. A few recommendations that I could provide in this case, if this is at all helpful, is I think a lot of it really starts with the internal enablement that happens from the inside. So you may be a great, strategist when it comes to AI-enabled use cases and things within your own remit. I think historically what we've seen be successful is it really needs to be a company-wide initiative, and there needs to be some level of enablement with certain playbooks and other materials to be able to get everyone on board with the mission and then understand how to maximize those tools effectively. A lot of it really comes to also, because a lot of these things are AI enabled agents and tools, is to help and make sure that teams are trained on prompt engineering. I think we've kind of all realized when you've sent something into ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of one of these tools is, hey, can you make me an email template? That might come in 300,000 different forms, and it might not at all be what you're looking for. So I think a lot of the pieces around how are we really writing prompts to get the outcome that we're needed, and hey, can you make me a template as if you are this type of client in this type of industry, you have this sentiment level, you are recommending this and this outcome in this use case, and I want it to be in this tone with this specific um, coming from this type of lens. That will give you a more accurate outcome of what you're actually looking for. And then you can obviously use the human element on top of that to give some final points or maybe reorganize things to give you what you're looking for. I think prompt engineering is quite important, and I think a lot of people are missing or maybe not maximizing AI tools because there is a lack of potentially what I could be doing from a prompt engineering standpoint. And then position as thought leaders. Obviously, I think this is pretty prevalent too, is the more that you are speaking out about these things, the more that you're ahead of the space, I think the better things end up becoming for you in terms of positioning yourself as a knowledge leader in the area. People obviously want to work with people that they feel comfortable with and that feel have the knowledge and the skill sets to be able to assist them. I think it's, again, AI, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And if anything, it should be an asset in all of our day-to-days. Positioning ourselves as thought leaders is obviously a great step to be able to provide that proactivity to clients. And then transparent AI policies is, I think, quite important. I think sometimes we think about too, like, what is the nature of how AI is going to evolve? Do we have the proper AI governance? What does that all mean? I think if your organization is very entrusting with AI tools, making sure that you have transparent AI policies, when does something cross the line? When does something not cross the line? How are you maintaining data privacy? All of those things are quite important, just to make sure that when you are using the tooling, that it is being held to a high standard. And then also one thing that I would recommend, something that we are doing more prevalently here at Active Campaign, is offer AI-driven packages. with human value added on top of that. If there's a way that you can position packages to show the capabilities that you're able to offer clients, and you show examples of ROI that's been derived from other capabilities using AI for similar clients, that's a great way to get buy-in on the services that you're providing and offer some level of AI expertise within the package itself, and then making sure that you're obviously offering the human element checklist on top of that so that people feel comfortable that you have a guided approach to how you're using these tools and where you're going to take that.
Miranda, there's a
Sure.
question. Scott has his hand raised.
Yeah, Scott, what's your question?
Hey, Miranda, me again. I was curious, we're talking about AI tools at kind of like a higher level, but in your experience, have certain tools gotten stronger in certain capacities? Like the little bit of what I've heard is like Claude is better for writing than ChatGPT as an example. And you kind of get those reputations, but it feels a little bit like bro science at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Curious if, in your experience, you've seen certain tools leverage themselves better in other ways than others.
That's a great question. So Active Campaign, we use a couple of different tools. We also have some things that are homegrown because within our own SaaS platform, we provide AI tooling for our clients and our resellers. Um, I would agree. I think Claude is better for content creation. When it comes to you're a marketer looking to provide content, a lot of that is are you vetted properly on prompt engineering? I think also, from my personal opinion, I think we're probably maybe a year or two out from really starting to get really strong with the things that we can provide that you are trying to derive cold turkey. Um, I recommend if you guys are looking to help with those tools, getting for content creation, things of that nature, feed them some materials that you've already created so they can start to understand kind of what is your brand perception, what is the nature of what you're trying to get out of that, so we can start building original content with the existing materials that you have from the brand perception in mind, and that where it starts to feed into this machine. What I will say is I personally love using, if you're a Google shop, Google Gemini is really great about being able to do kind of like internal enablement tools. So I recommend when I talk to my team, we want to work on a new initiative, I say, hey, I'm setting up a gem for Gemini to basically say, we're going to look into a client portfolio, for example, of what types of things do they care about, what customers are they serving, what types of things do they need when it comes to like very easy conversions. And then we set up basically all of these gems to be able to send to all of our agency partners that we work with recommendations on where they should take some of those actions and initiatives based on what their clients are doing and what's interesting for their clients in the space. That also helps us too when it comes into pitches and things that we're looking to do with our agency partners and their clients is, hey, we've taken this investigation, we've had AI scan all of the ethos and the interwebs of like what you're currently working on, what you're focused on. We've aligned our solutions based on those key factors of ways that we think this would be most impactful for you. Is this something that you're interested in exploring further, and how do we kind of go about that? So I think Claude is great for content creation from like a branding standpoint, or also just general content creation for emails, that type of thing. With feeding it into certain things that you've already done, so it shapes that. And then also Gemini is great for like internal tools and setting up those things. And then chat is great if you need to rewrite some sentences, or you need to just gather some general feedback and data around that. Um, and that's kind of the big three that I would say we typically use. I'm sure our engineering team or other folks use a lot of really, intricate details, but from like a customer facing role, that's typically what we see day in and out.
Cool. Thank you.
I want to be mindful of time. I think we've got a couple minutes that I want to set apart for any questions that we have at the end. But I do have a couple notes just around like refining the service model. I think what the best case scenario is for agencies moving forward, when we see collectively from our group of people that we work with, is they really focus on like the focus expertise of what they offer and what they differentiate themselves within the marketplace. I don't think even if it was 10 or 15 years ago that you would see very much of a differentiated approach there. But since AI is here to stay, how do we leverage what have historically been our strengths, putting that in combination with allowing AI tools to really enhance those strengths, and then obviously positioning yourself in the market with that in mind. Apply the human element. Again, people like to talk to humans. If I'm personally not getting what I need from a chat bot, I'm very happy to say I need to speak to an agent to get something solved so people can understand what you're trying to say. I think the human element is not lost on anyone. I think we need to figure out where does that blend together, where we can obviously use AI to derive great data points and then have the human element come on top of that and really bring it home. I don't think any of that is going to go away anytime soon, but the way that people can be more equipped with tooling while providing a great experience from a person to person standpoint is still going to be key in there. AI governance, having organizations have really strong parameters on what AI can and can't do is going to help us shape, obviously, what that means for the future, and making sure that we have good ethics when it comes to the governance of AI is obviously really important. And then the biggest thing I think is really strong training and enablement. A lot of this stuff I think spearheads from your organizations when it comes to certain departments, like your security or tech teams who are able to provide and start a lot of those initiatives for you. But what I think is a great way to help and shape training and enablement is understanding like what is the lens this means from like a customer facing perspective, and how can I provide input from the field that we're hearing from not only our partners, service providers, agencies, but also the clients that they're speaking with, and how can I ingest that information to be able to have those teams shape what material, trainings, collateral things are happening when it comes to what they care about and how that means for us. I think a lot of those things are quite imperative, and the foundation to anything to build a strong presence in any way when it comes to AI and leveraging those tools is a strong training program for all of that. What's next? Reimagine what's possible. I think it sounds like we're all kind of at it in what AI is. We're using it in certain facets within our day-to-day, but if you're not using that a ton, or maybe there was some things that were brought up today that I could shine some light on, start small. Like understand kind of what's a use case that you can use with something that you haven't previously. Ask more from your tools. So if you already have certain tools built in, understand and maybe do a little bit of research on the back end of like, what can I actually get out of this tool? What does that mean for me? I love to just honestly surf the web of like how people are using these tools. How are they setting up prompts? The other day I was looking for potentially doing a new headshot because mine on LinkedIn is a bit outdated. So I was having Gemini try to fashion me a, existing new headshot, and the outcomes that you can derive from some of the things are quite crazy. So that I would say kind of reach out into other resources, understand what's out there. And there's a lot of people currently doing really good work when it comes to how to best manage and leverage these platforms and what you can do with them. Think big. I think a lot of it too is maybe we don't necessarily know what the B is. Maybe we're currently sitting at A and we know that we need to get to C, but we don't necessarily know what the B bridge is for the current point in time. I think when you figure out what your C is and what the end goal is, understand too, like how can those tools be used to bridge that gap? And what does that necessarily mean? I think a lot of it is trial and error. But once you really hit that stride, it's really effective. What could your team do with more bandwidth, with more resources? If I had 20 extra hours in my week, what could I be using that 20 extra hours to be doing if the tooling that I'm using is kind of offloading some of that? And then remember, it's not about working harder, it's about working and creating smarter. I think a lot of this is Do we want AI to continue to replace every facet of our job? No, I don't think that's even a realistic possibility since everyone is so talented and vetted in their own strengths, and AI will never have the human element associated with that. But what can we do at scale? How can I free up some time to go take on more clients or understand how to better derive ROI for my clients, and what does that even mean? I think that those are things that we think about when it comes to a regular occurrence on using some of these tools. And yeah, my last blurb to follow this up, and we'll set some time up for a few questions here, is AI will not replace agencies. They will not replace people who provide services. That's very apparent, but agencies who harness AI and guide their clients with integrity and expertise will replace those that don't. Obviously, because AI is becoming so prevalent in the space, clients are going to be looking for agencies and solution partners who are going to be obviously expertise and vetted in that space. It's kind of obviously with SratFest, adapt or die mentality. It's kind of in that same vein. So with that being said, that's it for me, and I'll open it up to questions.
We're almost at time, but if maybe we can take one question, but we have to wrap up in a minute or two. But thank you so much, Miranda. That was great. I think Shayla has their hand raised.
Yes, I do have one question. I know one thing that we went over was performance marketing, but my question with that is like, how is data used to determine the appropriate benchmark or standards for measuring success?
That's a great question. I think a little bit of this is what questions are you having with your clients on like what they determine is successful, or what does that mean? And then how are you leveraging the AI tools to input into what the outcomes are that you're trying to derive? I don't know if we're with the tools necessary there yet for being able to say or have the AI tools say for us what is the outcome that we're looking, or what does success look like in that case. I think there is still a specific level of involvement. So I'll give you an example. Active Campaign being a platform for autonomous marketing, we have a lot of recommendations that we're providing for our customers when it comes to using our new active intelligence software around conversions and also certain things that marketers want to see. So for example, we have recommendations within our platform that will say, for your business, are you interested? We're seeing a trend in certain conversions when it comes to healthcare solutions in this, or healthcare services in this way. Would you like to increase 30% more conversions? This is how the system thinks it's going to do it based on actions that historically have been taken and what behavior it's seeing in the platform historically. So I think what's going to be interesting is how did those meld together, where like maybe you as a human element person to this strategy might be like, well, my client doesn't want to increase conversions in this way. Or maybe sometimes the system is flagging something that maybe we're missing as humans, and then we are able to kind of retool strategy based on the data inputs that they're seeing based on that, and then obviously put emphasis in one thing or another. So I think it's probably going to be a blend of both, at least for the time being. But ultimately, I think that's why the human element is nice, is because you can obviously shape what good looks like in your eyes. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Miranda.